The whisper on elongated, disjointed limbs. Silas turned and sprinted. The branches tore at his face and clothes like desperate fingers. Behind him, the electronic voice of his dropped GPS echoed through the TREES, screaming in agony before cutting out entirely into the sound of a baby's piercing, metallic wail. He didn't look back until he burst through the tree line into the bright, blinding safety of the main road. He quit his job the next morning. But every night since, when the house grows completely quiet, Silas hears the rhythmic, unmistakable sound of tiny, wet hands clapping softly against his bedroom window. Elena was a night shift audio engineer tasked with cleaning up old archival tapes for the university's history department. It was monotonous work, mostly digitizing decades-old lectures and oral histories. At 3 a.m., inside a soundproof basement studio, the world felt incredibly distant. She opened a file labeled Reel 44, 1974 Soundscape Experiment. When she pressed play, her headphones filled with the low, rhythmic thrum of white noise. It was soothing at first. But as she adjusted the frequencies to filter out the hiss, she noticed a secondary pattern hidden beneath the static. It sounded like breathing. Heavy, wet, and rhythmic. Elena dragged the slider, isolated the track, and boosted the gain. The breathing grew sharper. Then, a voice broke through. It was faint, barely a rasp, but distinctly human. "Is anyone there?" Elena frowned. The experiment note said the tape was recorded in an empty, sealed vault. She leaned closer to the monitor, her fingers dancing across the soundboard to amplify the vocal track. "I can see you through the glass," the voice whispered. A chill cascaded down Elena's spine. The audio from 1974 was describing her current surroundings. She looked up at the double-paned observation glass directly in front of her console. The dark studio on the other side was pitch black, reflecting only her own pale face. "Don't turn around," the tape hissed, the static suddenly spiking into a harsh, aggressive squeal. "The tape isn't a recording. It's a door." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She reached for the power switch, but her mouse cursor refused to move. It was dragging itself across the screen, opening software after software, pulling the audio levels to absolute maximum. The headphones tore at her ears with a deafening screech of feedback, but through the pain, she heard the voice shift. It was no longer coming from the headphones. The rasping, wet breath was vibrating directly against the back of her neck. Chico. Old feel the cold, stagnant air of a 50-year-old vault washing over her shoulders. Elena sat frozen, staring at her own reflection in the glass, watching as a pair of gray, decayed hands slowly reached out from the darkness behind her, wrapping around her throat. The luxury apartment was of steel, mostly because the previous tenant had vanished without a trace. Julian didn't care about superstitions, he cared about the floor-to-ceiling smart mirror installed in the master bathroom. It displayed the weather, the time, and news headlines while he brushed his teeth. For the first week, it was perfect. But on Tuesday night, Julian noticed a glitch. He was washing his face, eyes closed against the soap. When he wiped his eyes and looked up, the mirror image of himself was slightly delayed. His reflection didn't look up until a fraction of a second after he did. Julian blinked, rubbing his eyes. The reflection mirrored the blink perfectly. "Just tired," he muttered, turning off the faucet. The next night, the delay was worse. Julian raised his left hand to fix his hair. In the glass, his reflection raised its hand, but the fingers were subtly elongated, the knuckles bent at slightly unnatural angles. More unsettlingly, the reflection wasn't looking at his face. It was staring intently at his throat. Julian backed away from the sink. The reflection didn't move. It remained leaning over the counter, staring at the empty space where Julian had just been standing, a wide, humorless grin stretching across its face. Terrified, Julian grabbed a heavy bath towel and threw it over the mirror, taping it down securely. He decided he would call the landlord in the morning and demand the smart mirror be removed. He went to bed, locking his bedroom door. Sleep came fitfully, plagued by dreams of glass shattering and muffled laughter. At 4 a.m., a bright light woke him. Julian opened his eyes, squinting against the glare. The smart mirror wasn't in the bathroom anymore. It was standing on his bedroom floor, propped against the wall at the foot of his bed, glowing with a harsh, blue light. The towel lay crumpled on the floor. Julian tried to scream, but his limbs were heavy, paralyzed by sheer terror. Inside the glass, his reflection was slowly climbing out of a mirrored bed, stepping forward until its gray hands pressed hard against the surface of the glass from the inside. With a sickening, wet pop, the reflection's fingers breached the surface of the mirror, sliding into the real world like liquid silver, pulling the rest of its grinning body out into the dark bedroom.